Hello coaches and welcome to this edition of Give and Go Live. My name's David Newbury and I'm joined as always by my colleague Ian Barker. Hello Ian.
Hello David, pleasure to be here.
So Ian, we're on the fourth presentation in a series of four looking at the effectiveness and the tactics around the idea of playing 1, 2 or 3 strikers. And in this final presentation, we're going to look at some of the factors that will help us to determine whether 1, 2 or 3 is the best option for us with our teams. And let's start with a review of the possible formations and the possible options for the striker line.
Sure. So right off the bat, the lone striker, the number 9, your primary goal scoring threat, and or the player who is responsible for holding up play and then bringing in to play all of the oncoming midfielders / withdrawn strikers. So the central number 9, probably a player that has got to play with their back to goal quite a bit, has to find a way to bring the rest of his or her teammates into play, and is probably not going to operate too often outside of the width of the penalty areas. So if you wanted a point of reference for a lone striker, if they're moving too far to the left or right, they're probably not helping your team in the lone striker feature. Moving from the 1 to the 2, and there are a couple of different considerations. This is one where the 2 players they're both strikers. Now they may be different. They may, one may be tall and robust and one may be quick and shifty. Very often they're quite similar. So they have similar roles and responsibilities, which means that they don't even really need to combine that much. They simply just go do their job, one on the left and one on the right. But the more traditional interpretation of 2 strikers is 2 players, one to the left, one to the right, engaging the 2 center backs nice and high on the park. The slightly more nuanced interpretation of 2 strikers, however, would be where there's a degree of complementary and a little bit more sophistication and understanding. So number 9, the highest, the one who is going to engage the back line, and then the player who doesn't want to go up there and get marked, but can operate in a space between the toes of the center back and the heels of the corresponding defensive central midfielder, and finds this little pocket of space. They could be the quarterback, the unlocking player, or they could be the player that feeds off of number 9 and then moves without the ball into attacking position. So a nuanced type interpretation of a front 2 where they're now staggered off of each other as opposed to parallel with each other. And then finally, going to a 3-man front, and this is the most common interpretation of a 3-man front. You can see them with triangles, so 2 high, 1 deep, or 1 high and 2 deep, and very central. But here we've got a full width of the field, so we've got 11 on the left, 7 on the right, and then that central player who remains as the lone striker down the middle, as in the 1 striker formation, but has now got a lot more support to his or her immediate left and right from 2 players who are designated to play a lot higher.
So now we're going to review some of the factors that affect our decision making. We'll start with the discussion about personnel, and there's certainly some decision making that goes around what personnel we have available to us as coaches. If we're in the luxurious position of recruiting, then we of course can recruit players with the attributes that we would like, but for the majority of coaches that are working with youth players or high school players, we really get what we've got. So a couple of things that we might want to consider. Firstly is the size and the ability of the player to move around the field. More mobile players, we might want to consider playing in winger positions or in the number 10. If they're a little bit larger, stronger, more robust, but less mobile, we might want to play more with a number 9 or number 9s. Certainly the attributes of the players, the ability for them to play with their back to goal is a key characteristic of a striker, particularly of a number 9 striker, who spends most of their game with their back to the opponent's goal, someone who moves within a limited area of the field, more central, tries to occupy the defenders of the opponent, and looking to play the ball up high for them to control the ball and then feed back into runners from midfield. That's more of a number 9. Of course, then you have the the player such as a winger or number 10, who will be much more mobile, hopefully coming off the outside and then trying to break the line of the opponents by dribbling or running beyond the number 9. And then, of course, if there's someone who is particularly comfortable scoring goals, someone who regularly you can rely on to score goals, then you've probably found yourself a decent striker and someone you will want to play in a high position. Yeah, let's talk about some of the factors as they pertain to defensive strategy.
Yeah, so I think there's some good bullets here on the left. The one I would like to just focus on, though, is the highlighted yellow one. So consider this. When the opponent, this yellow player, has the ball, the opponent has the ball, all of our players are defenders. In the same way that when we have the ball, all of our team are attackers. So just because you've got, in this case, 3 forwards, 11, 9, and 7, at the point where yellow wins the ball, they have a defensive responsibility. If it's just one striker, it's going to be very difficult for him or her to pressure the back 4 should they win it. But in this case, we played with 3 forwards. So what we're going to ask our 3 forwards to do, potentially, is defend from high and prevent the opponent playing out the back. So as 7 pressures here, 9 steps up, 11 comes across, it becomes virtually impossible for the goalkeeper, especially at a youth technical level, to feel comfortable trying to play out the back. And so in this particular example, we see the option the goalkeeper takes, because the 3 strikers, the 3 forwards for the blue team, are defending so high, is that he or she has then played a long ball, a punt, which now turns that into a 50-50 challenge as opposed to clear possession. So one of our forward lines will be, how will we effectively defend when we turn the ball over? Because again, our number 9, our number 11, our number 7, if we play with a number 10, they will have a defensive responsibility. And it's for you as the coach to make sense of that based on their ability in the formation.
Ian, with youth players and high school players, we'll often want the opponent to play out of the back because sometimes the fullbacks, the defenders, aren't as comfortable on the ball, and maybe we have the opportunity of a turnover. Without modifying 3 at the top, if that's our formation, our chosen formation, how can you modify the shape of the team when the ball is with the goalkeeper in order to encourage it without compromising the 3 up top?
That's a good question. So one of the things you see here is, in this particular example, it's a great time for number 7 to pressure this player because he or she has their back to our goal and is facing the wrong way. So I think that's a great time to press. That would be a cue. When you can see the opponent's number and he or she is deep, go press them. But let's say, for example, it's a goal kick and you want to encourage the opponent to play a little bit. What we do here is we talk about setting up at a restraining line. So what I might do is I might say, or a line of confrontation. So if you bear with me here, I might say to 7, 11, and 9, set up on the top of the center circle. My midfield would be about here, and my back's behind them. And so I've set up my team, probably narrowed it a little bit. And what I'm saying to my opponent is, you can play here, and here, and here, and here, and you can build and build and build. And then once you get to this line, our line of confrontation, or our restraining line, then we're going to come at you. So you can decide if you want to have 7, 9, 11 press high or drop them down to encourage the opponent to play, but still have a lot of attacking space to run at them.
Very good, Ian. And let's now look at the final slide, looking at the attacking strategy. So what would we consider are important considerations for us when we're deciding on 1, 2, or 3 from an attacking perspective?
Yeah, this is a favorite slide of mine. So again, some good bullets on the left. I'm going to focus on the highlighted yellow bullet. This is going to depend on your personnel and your preference. So if this player here has the ability to score off of crosses and to head the ball, let's say at goal, let's say that player has that ability, where do you want the ball? Well, you want it here and here where crosses can come in for that player to finish. Let's say this player has blazing speed and the corresponding player on the other flank has blazing speed. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get the ball into the middle zone to bring in the yellows and then you're quickly going to want to spin it out there so that blazing speed can be used. If you have a particularly gifted, let's say number 8, who can power forward from deep midfield spaces and score, then again, you're going to want to start in the wide places, draw the opponent over and release that. So a really good understanding for you as the coach of where your strengths and weaknesses are personnel-wise will determine if you maybe go centrally to kick the ball out wide to get crosses in, or do you start out wide to kick the ball back in centrally? Where are your strengths and where are the places you can exploit on the opponent? And clearly, the primary thoughts are flank spaces and withdrawn striking spaces, all with the ultimate goal of getting right here inside the penalty area, and then, of course, ultimately in the goal. So some really nice considerations to play with when you look at your personnel.
Well, thank you, Ian, for your time. And oh, actually, we have one more slide. I apologize. We are looking at training themes. So what are some of the training themes we would expect if we were working with the front line? And I'll just pick up one that I like in particular is the idea of pattern play, the whole idea of us building out concepts, sometimes unopposed, with our players so they start to understand the movement patterns before we start layering in the defenders. Ian, anything here that really jumps out at you?
Yeah, I'm glad you identified pattern play. Pattern play would be taking 3 or 4 players, maybe 5, 6, 7 players, and ultimately the entire team, and working through exactly what Dave says, patterns. I would very quickly build in modest opposition, so there is now a consequence for the pattern, so you can look at the options off of the primary pattern, but pattern plays can be good. The most sophisticated points about attacking principles is mobility. So we know we want to try to score, pass, dribble, shoot. We know we want to support, help the player with the ball, but the rest of our team needs to be moving both vertically and horizontally to try to shift the opponent around. So mobility, players willing to move is key. Some of the more fundamentals to attacking play, obviously width, certainly if we're going to go wide, crossing, finishing, and there is no such thing as a bad finish. So if it comes off the backside of a kid or off a toe poke, we'll take them. And then as we get more sophisticated, can we both play with the ball coming over our shoulder, running forward? That's what all youth players do when they begin with. They just run to goal. But now can we play with our back to goal, bring our midfield in, and sometimes we get turned without the ball, but now we're facing the way we want to go. So I think these are all legitimate, really strong, legitimate considerations. But the one, as David picked out pattern, the one for me that I'm going to pick out is this notion of combination. Effective attacking requires understanding between 1 and 2 players, then 2 and 3, 3 and 4, and so on and so forth. And I would think about function here. So putting players in the best positions for their skill sets, and then giving them tons and tons of repetitions with those colleagues in the positions they play. You can't expect the players on a Saturday to execute attacking movement and ideas if they haven't played together in training and they haven't seen those attacking ideas and combinations repeatedly in training for the 1 or 2 times they're going to pop up in the game. So what you do in training is really what pays the dividends. The dividend is paid up on Saturday. So don't think it's enough to tell the players in the pregame warm-up, go out there and combine. You've got to make sure they know what that means. They know who they're combining with. They know the relative skill sets and inclinations of their teammates, and you'll be much better for it. So combination to me and grounding it in training is key.
Well, thank you, Ian, and thank you, coaches, for joining us on this edition of Give and Go Live.